The autumn breeze swept through the financial district as Leonard made his way through the revolving doors of the towering glass building. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floor, each step a declaration of power. At 42, he had built his empire from scratch, transforming a modest investment firm into a financial powerhouse. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive floor, casting long shadows across the pristine hallways. Leonard's corner office, a testament to his success, overlooked the bustling city below. The space was meticulously arranged, every award, every piece of furniture carefully chosen to intimidate and impress. Mr. Leonard, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes, his secretary announced through the intercom, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness. He didn't respond, he never did. In his world, acknowledgement was a luxury reserved for equals, and he had few of those. The conference room buzzed with tension as executives straightened their ties and smoothed their blazers upon his entrance. Leonard's presence had that effect, like a frost creeping across a garden, silencing even the bravest souls. He took his seat at the head of the table, his steel-grey eyes scanning the room with calculated indifference. As presentations began, Emily, the new coffee service girl, moved quietly around the table. She was young, perhaps 22, with gentle eyes and trembling hands that betrayed her nervousness. Leonard watched her with mild irritation as she carefully placed cups before each executive. The catastrophe unfolded in slow motion. Emily's heel caught on the carpet's edge just as she reached Leonard's chair. The porcelain cup wavered, then tilted, sending a cascade of scalding coffee across his $12,000 suit. The room fell silent, save for Emily's gasp of horror. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Leonard. Please, let me help." She reached for a napkin, her face pale with fear. Leonard rose slowly, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You're fired. Security will escort you out." His words were quiet, but carried the weight of an executioner's axe. "Please, Mr. Leonard, I just started. I have rent due next week, and my mother's medical bills." Emily's eyes welled with tears, but Leonard had already turned away. "Someone clean this mess," he commanded, removing his ruined jacket, "and get me a fresh coffee. We have a meeting to finish." The remaining hour passed as if nothing had happened. Leonard dominated the discussion, tearing apart proposals and demanding better results. When an executive mentioned setting up an employee assistance program, Leonard scoffed. "We're not running a charity," he declared. "People either perform or they leave. It's that simple." As the sun set, Leonard stood before his office window, admiring his reflection in the darkened glass. The city lights twinkled below, a kingdom he'd built through unwavering determination and ruthless decisions. He straightened his replacement tie, a perfect Windsor knot, and smiled at his reflection. "Sir," his secretary's voice crackled through the intercom, "your last appointment cancelled. Would you like me to call your driver?" "No," he replied, gathering his briefcase. "I'll walk. The garage isn't far." The thought of Emily briefly crossed his mind as he packed his things. He remembered hearing her sob in the elevator as security led her out. The memory brought no remorse, only a slight annoyance at having to replace his suit. "Weakness has no place in business," he muttered to himself, a mantra he'd lived by for decades. The same philosophy that had elevated him from a middle-class background to the pinnacle of financial success. As Leonard strode through the lobby, employees scurried out of his path like mice before a cat. He enjoyed their fear. It meant respect, power, control. The night guard barely dared to meet his eyes as he pushed through the revolving door into the crisp evening air. Little did he know, as he walked toward the parking garage, that his carefully constructed world of power and control was about to shatter. The universe had different plans for Leonard, and they began with an old woman in a dimly lit alley, her wrinkled hands spread across a deck of tarot cards. Leonard's footsteps echoed through the empty streets as he made his way to the parking garage. The evening had turned chilly, and wisps of fog curled around the streetlights, creating ghostly halos in the darkness. He pulled his replacement jacket closer, still irritated about the coffee incident. A flicker of candlelight caught his attention. In a narrow alley between two buildings, an old woman sat at a small table draped with purple velvet. Strings of tiny lights hung above her, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. Her silver hair was wrapped in a deep red scarf, and her fingers, adorned with ancient-looking rings, moved gracefully over a deck of worn tarot cards. "The spirits are restless tonight," she spoke without looking up, her accent carrying hints of Eastern Europe. "They whisper your name, Cold Wolf." Leonard paused, amused by her presumption. "I don't believe in fortune-telling," he said dismissively, yet something about her presence made him stop. "Isla sees what others cannot," she replied, finally raising her eyes to meet his. They were an unusual shade of amber, almost golden in the candlelight. "Your soul wears chains of your own making." A chill ran down Leonard's spine, but he masked it with a scoff. "My soul is doing just fine, thanks to my bank account." Isla spread 3 cards on the table, their edges worn smooth by years of handling. "The mirror of truth," she said, touching the first card. "It shows what lies beneath the mask." Her finger moved to the second card. "The tower, destruction of what was built on false foundations." Finally, she touched the third card, her expression growing grave. "The judgment, a reckoning approaches." "Spare me the dramatic predictions," Leonard sneered, though something about her steady gaze made him uncomfortable. "I make my own destiny." Isla gathered her cards with deliberate slowness. "Pride comes before a fall, Mr. Leonard. Tomorrow, when you look in the mirror, you will see what others see. The reflection never lies." "Right," he laughed, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. "And I suppose you'll want payment for this theatrical performance." "I don't want your money," Isla replied, her voice taking on an ethereal quality. "Done, but remember my words, when your reflection shows you the truth. Only genuine remorse can break the chains you forged." Thunder rumbled in the distance, though the weather forecast had predicted clear skies. Leonard turned to leave, but Isla's voice followed him. "The mirror knows your soul, Cold Wolf. It will show you who you truly are." As he walked away, the temperature seemed to drop further. He glanced back once, but the alley appeared empty. No lights, no table, no mysterious fortune teller. Only shadows and silence remained. That night, Leonard dreamed of mirrors, endless corridors lined with them, each showing a slightly different version of himself. He woke at dawn, drenched in sweat, Isla's words echoing in his mind. Standing before his bathroom mirror, he studied his reflection with unusual intensity. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then, as the morning light crept through the window, he noticed something odd. Were those new lines around his eyes? Had his expression always looked so harsh? He leaned closer, and for a split second, he could have sworn his reflection sneered at him. Leonard stepped back, shaking his head to clear it. "Ridiculous," he muttered, blaming lack of sleep and that strange encounter for playing tricks with his mind. Yet as he adjusted his tie, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about his reflection, something subtle but deeply disturbing. Throughout his morning routine, he found himself avoiding the mirror's gaze, an unfamiliar sensation of unease settling in his stomach. It was only when he caught his image in his phone's black screen that he realized what bothered him most. In every reflection, his eyes seemed darker, colder, more like those of a stranger than his own. The next few days became a descent into horror for Leonard. Each morning, his reflection grew more grotesque, as if someone were slowly peeling away a mask to reveal something monstrous beneath. His once sharp jawline appeared sunken, dark shadows pooled beneath his eyes, and his skin took on an ashen pallor that no amount of lighting could remedy. In his office, Leonard replaced the elegant mirror behind his desk with abstract art. During meetings, he noticed people staring at him with increasing unease, though they said nothing. He caught glimpses of his distorted image in the conference room's glass walls, a twisted version of himself that made his stomach churn. "Sir, are you feeling well?" his secretary asked one morning, concern evident in her voice. "You seem different." Leonard waved her away, but her words haunted him. In the privacy of his executive bathroom, he forced himself to confront his reflection. What he saw made him stagger backward. His teeth had yellowed and grown crooked, his eyes had sunken so deeply they resembled black pits, and his skin hung in loose folds like melting wax. He splashed water on his face, heart pounding. When he looked up again, droplets of water trickled down the grotesque visage in the mirror. He touched his face, smooth, normal, but the reflection showed gnarled fingers with long, yellowed nails. During lunch at his usual high-end restaurant, Leonard couldn't bear to look at the mirrored walls. His water glass became a torture device, each sip showing him glimpses of a monster wearing his clothes. He stopped attending client meetings, sending subordinates in his place. His phone's screen remained perpetually dark. At night, sleep evaded him. Every reflective surface in his penthouse became a portal to horror. He covered mirrors with sheets, turned photographs face down, and kept all windows curtained. But he couldn't escape his reflection in the chrome elevator doors, the polished marble floors, or the countless glass surfaces that surrounded him. One evening, as thunder rattled his windows, Leonard caught sight of himself in a decorative mirror he'd forgotten to cover. The creature staring back wore his expensive suit, but its face was a nightmare made flesh. Rotting teeth jutted from blackened gums, skin hung in grotesque folds, and those eyes, those terrible eyes, burned with all the cruelty he'd ever inflicted on others. He hurled his crystal tumbler at the mirror, shattering both. But each broken piece showed the same horrifying reflection, multiplied dozens of times, all staring back at him with accusatory malice. His phone buzzed. Another missed board meeting. The screen lit up, and in its reflection, he saw his face twisted into an inhuman snarl. With trembling hands, he dropped the phone into a drawer. Panic drove him to consult doctors, who found nothing wrong. Therapists suggested stress and recommended rest. But Leonard knew the truth. He was witnessing his soul made visible, and it was far uglier than he'd ever imagined. At work, rumors spread. Executive whispers suggested he was having a breakdown. His secretary started leaving documents outside his door rather than face him. Even the cleaning staff avoided his office until he left for the day. In the moments when he had to see his reflection, Leonard noticed that each cruel decision, each harsh word, made the image worse. After berating a junior analyst to tears, he caught his reflection grinning with sharp, twisted teeth. When he denied a longtime employee's emergency leave request, his mirrored eyes became darker and more soulless. Finally, after nearly 2 weeks of this torture, Leonard realized he couldn't continue. The monster in the mirror was winning, consuming every aspect of his life. He needed to find Isla again, needed to understand how to break this curse before he lost his last shred of sanity. As he made this decision, huddled in his darkened office, he swore he heard distant laughter, or perhaps it was crying. In the window's reflection, the thing wearing his face smiled with terrible knowing. Leonard spent 3 nights searching for Isla, prowling the financial district's darkened streets. His expensive shoes, now scuffed and worn, carried him through every alley and side street where fortune tellers might gather. Finally, On the fourth night, he found her. The purple velvet tablecloth remained unchanged, but now black candles flickered in brass holders, their flames dancing in the autumn wind. Isla sat perfectly still, as if she'd been waiting for him all along. "The mirror speaks truth, doesn't it?" she asked, her amber eyes reflecting candlelight. "Your soul has become visible." Leonard collapsed into the empty chair across from her. His voice, once commanding, now trembled. "Please, you have to help me. I can't live like this anymore. Every reflection, it's becoming worse. I'm becoming a monster." "Becoming?" Isla raised an eyebrow. "No, cold wolf. The mirror simply shows what was already there. Your cruelty, your contempt, your cold heart, they've always been visible to those who truly looked." She spread her cards again, but this time they showed different images. A broken crown, a man kneeling in penitence, a rising sun. "There is a way," she said softly, "but it requires something you've never given, genuine remorse." "I'll do anything," Leonard pleaded. "Money, power, name your price." Isla's laugh held no humor. That's exactly why you're cursed. Everything to you has a price, but some things can't be bought. You must find those you've wronged. Look into their eyes, not their mirrors, their eyes, and feel true remorse. Only sincere repentance can heal a corrupted soul. Leonard thought of Emily, the coffee girl. Her tear-stained face had haunted his nightmares lately, mixing with the horror of his reflections. "How do I find them? How do I even begin?" "Start with the most recent," Isla advised. "The wound still bleeds fresh. But remember, empty words won't break the curse. Your heart must truly change." He found Emily at a small diner, wearing a waitress uniform and looking exhausted. When she saw him, the coffee pot in her hand trembled. "Emily," he began, then stopped. For the first time in his life, words failed him. I was wrong." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Excuse me. The day with the coffee, I was cruel, unnecessarily cruel. You deserved better. I want to offer you your job back. But more than that, I want to apologize, truly apologize." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but these were different from her last tears in his presence. "I never expected to hear those words from you." "Neither did I," Leonard admitted. "But I'm learning. I'm learning how ugly cruelty can be." Later that night, passing a store window, Leonard caught his reflection. The monstrous visage remained, but something had changed. The eyes, they held a glimmer of humanity. Over the next week, Leonard sought out those he'd wronged. Each sincere apology lightened the darkness in his reflection. The crooked teeth gradually straightened, the sunken eyes began to fill out, but his image remained distorted. There was one person left to face. Sarah had been his assistant for 5 years before that fateful board meeting. She'd questioned his decision to cancel employee health benefits, pointing out the human cost. In response, he'd not only fired her, but had blacklisted her throughout the industry. Finding her proved challenging. She'd left the city, started a small bookstore in a quiet coastal town. When Leonard pushed open the shop's door, the bell's cheerful jingle contrasted sharply with Sarah's hardened expression. "You have some nerve showing up here," she said, closing the book she'd been reading. "Come to destroy what little I've built for myself." Leonard's reflection in the shop window behind her showed the monster he'd been. Harsh, cruel, soulless. "No, Sarah. I came to tell you that you were right about everything." She laughed bitterly. "Right. I lost my career, my reputation, my retirement savings. Being right didn't help me much, did it?" "I was a monster," Leonard admitted, the word carrying special weight given his recent experiences. "You tried to show me the human side of business, and I punished you for your compassion. I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that your words finally got through." Sarah studied him carefully. "You're different. she observed. Something's changed. The Leonard I knew would never admit to being wrong. Let's just say, I've seen myself clearly for the first time, he replied. I've started making changes at the company, reinstated health benefits, created a family leave policy. All the things you fought for, and this sudden change of heart, what prompted it? Leonard glanced at his reflection, still twisted but less demonic than before. Someone showed me what I'd become, what I was always becoming. Sarah, I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know how deeply I regret what I did to you. Tears formed in Sarah's eyes, but her voice remained steady. I've carried this anger for 2 years. It's exhausting, you know? Hating someone. I understand if you can't forgive me. She wiped her eyes. The fact that you came here, that you're actually apologizing, it means something. I can't forget what happened, but maybe I can forgive, for my own peace, if nothing else. The next morning, Leonard approached his bathroom mirror with trepidation. The face that greeted him was his own, not the perfectly manicured mask he'd worn before, but something more human. Lines of experience remained around his eyes, but they spoke of wisdom rather than cruelty. At the office, he instituted changes that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. Employee wellness programs, flexible schedules, a daycare center. Each decision felt right, natural, as if he'd finally aligned his external actions with an awakening inner humanity. Walking home that evening, he passed the alley where he'd first met Isla. The fortune-telling table was gone, but a single black candle burned in the window above. As he watched, the flame flickered and died, leaving only a thin trail of smoke spiraling into the darkening sky. His reflection in a passing car's window showed only Leonard, changed, humbled, but wholly himself. The curse was lifted, but its lessons would remain, etched not in his reflection, but in his soul. Spring arrived with transformative energy at Leonard's company. The once sterile office floors now buzzed with collaborative workspaces and genuine laughter. Employee turnover had dropped to historic lows, and productivity had soared, not through fear, but through engagement and satisfaction. Emily, now Director of Employee Relations, had implemented programs that other firms sought to emulate. The company's new reputation as an employee-first organization attracted top talent, and ironically, profits increased as morale improved. Sarah's bookstore had expanded, partly thanks to a small business grant program Leonard had created. She'd even accepted his invitation to join the company's advisory board, where her perspective on ethical business practices proved invaluable. One crisp morning, Leonard walked through a familiar alley, now transformed into a small community garden. Among the flowering plants, he spotted a purple velvet cloth draped over a stone bench. On it sat a single tarot card, the World, symbolizing completion and harmony. Beside it lay a handwritten note in elegant script. The mirror shows truth, but now your truth is beautiful. Keep your heart open, cold wolf. Ela. Leonard picked up the card, and in the morning dew on the bench's surface, his reflection smiled back, not with the polished perfection of his past, but with genuine warmth. The lines around his eyes now crinkled with frequent laughter, and his posture, while still confident, carried humility. That evening, during the company's annual gathering, Leonard stood before his employees. "A year ago, someone showed me what I'd become," he began, his voice carrying to the hushed crowd. "But you all showed me what I could be. Thank you for giving me the chance to change, to learn, to grow." The applause that followed wasn't the fearful acknowledgement of the past, but genuine appreciation. As Leonard surveyed the room, he caught glimpses of his reflection in the windows, clear, unconcealed, human. The monster was gone, replaced by a man who had learned to see himself through the eyes of others. In his pocket, the tarot card seemed to warm slightly. Somewhere in the city's endless maze of streets, perhaps Isla still helped others see their true reflections. But for Leonard, the mirror's lesson had become a permanent part of who he was. Not a curse to be broken, but a gift to be treasured. If you had to face your true reflection, would you be proud of what you see? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.